Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to put on our detective hats and adopt the mindset of a forensic investigator. We're going to show you exactly how to read job candidates using behavioral psychology and body language. You know, if you've ever walked out of an interview feeling like a candidate was just telling you exactly what you wanted to hear, but you couldn't quite prove it, well, you are in the right place. We're going to decode those unspoken signals that reveal who is truly sitting across the table from you.
So let's kick things off with the ultimate hiring question. Are you hiring the resume or the real person? Because honestly, if you're only looking at the piece of paper in front of you, you're missing the whole truth. Think about it. Resumes can be practically written by AI nowadays, cover letters get outsourced, and those perfect interview answers, highly rehearsed. But what cannot be easily faked is human behavior. We've got to look past that rehearsed script to uncover the actual human being you're thinking about bringing into your organization. Here is a totally wild number for you: 93%. A staggering 93% of what a candidate is actually telling you comes from their body language and tone, not their perfectly polished answers. Get this, only 7% of communication comes from the actual words they speak. 55% is pure body language. It's how they move, how they sit, how they react. And the other 38%? That's their voice quality and tone. So if you're only listening to the words, well, you're practically interviewing blindfolded. All right, let's get right into Section 1, the forensic recruiter mindset, seeing past the rehearsed answers. If you really want to become a forensic recruiter, you have to stop acting like a traditional HR rep. The very first technique you need is establishing what we call their baseline behavior. You do this during the initial small talk, so you can spot the exact moment they deviate into stress or deception later on. Think about how forensic investigators talk to suspects. They don't just kick the door in and start with the crime, right? They ask about their day, their family, their hobbies. Why? Because they absolutely need to see what that person looks like when they are telling the truth. You've got to do the exact same thing in an interview. Take a mental note of their eye movement, their posture, and their hand gestures when they're totally comfortable. Moving right along to Section 2, decoding the power handshake, what the first 5 seconds reveal. Literally before a single question is even asked, a candidate's handshake is broadcasting exactly how they view your authority. A dominant, palm-down handshake, that actually shows a subconscious lack of respect for leadership. On the flip side, an open palm, receptive handshake means they are ready to learn and accept direction. If a candidate comes in and their hand comes over the top, palm facing down, they are subconsciously trying to assert dominance over you. But if their hand comes in straight or even slightly palm up, they're in a receptive mode. They've already accepted your authority and are genuinely open to what you have to say. Next up is Section 3, uncovering true candidate motives. Let's talk about screening Gen Z and finding actual loyalty. So you ask them the classic question, why do you really want this job? When you ask this, you really need to discard candidates who just express a desperate need for money. You are hunting for a genuine desire to add value. The modern workplace has changed dramatically. If their answer revolves entirely around their own personal emergencies, like, man, I just need money for rent, or I just really need a job right now, they are not going to stick around when things get tough. You want the candidate who can clearly explain how their specific skills are going to solve your business problems over the next few years. Let's be real for a second. For modern Gen Z hires, true honesty usually looks like a solid, realistic 2 to 3 year plan to learn and contribute. It does not look like a fake promise of 10 years of unwavering loyalty. Gen Z highly values rapid growth and skill acquisition. If a young candidate looks you dead in the eye and says, look, I plan to give you my absolute best for the next 3 years, learn everything I possibly can, and help grow this department, that right there is a reliable, honest answer that you can actually bank on. That brings us to Section 4, testing for maximum productivity, using the stress test approach. Once we know their motives, we have to pressure test their absolute capacity for high productivity. Ask them how they handled a major crisis in the past. You want to see if they can survive the occasional 15-kilo workload in an environment that, usually only demands 5 kilos. Because every job has its smooth, easy days. Anyone can carry 5 kilos. But what happens when a sudden emergency drops 15 kilos right on their desk? Do they crumble? Do they complain? Ask them to recall a highly specific time they had to carry that 15-kilo load. And here's the trick. Watch their baseline behavior closely while they answer. Are they recalling a genuine memory? Or are they just inventing a story on the fly to sound heroic? All right, Section 5, spotting psychological red flags. This is all about protecting the workplace. This number is absolutely crucial, 18%. Pre-pandemic data actually shows that roughly 18% of people, so almost 1 in 6, struggle with some form of mental health or emotional management issue. Now, as a recruiter, it is obviously not your job to diagnose anyone, but you must observe if behavioral red flags manifest during the interview that could seriously disrupt your team. If you interview 20 people, statistical probability says a few of them will have significant struggles with emotional management. This isn't about judging people, right? It's simply about protecting the emotional harmony and productivity of your workplace from highly volatile individuals. Certain unchecked personality traits can act like literal emotional bombs in the workplace. Take a candidate leaning toward narcissism, for example. They're going to see themselves as supreme. They cannot handle you correcting their work, and they will ultimately shatter your workplace harmony. Then you have someone with borderline tendencies who might react with extreme emotional volatility to just standard everyday workplace stress. And a dependent personality, they will completely drain your management resources by needing constant, never-ending reassurance. So if you detect a candidate with an oversized ego who reacts poorly to even the mildest criticism, you're looking at someone who will likely resign abruptly and maybe even damage your brand on the way out. But you can actually test for this right in the interview. Try offering a mild, constructive critique of something on their resume or in their portfolio. If their ego suddenly flares up, their tone sharpens, and they instantly become defensive, wow, you have just diffused a bomb by simply choosing not to hire them.
Finally, let's dive into Section 6, Reading the Unseen Signals, Microexpressions and Tells.
Let's look at the microscopic physical tells that a real forensic profiler relies on. If a candidate's feet subtly change direction to point toward the door, they're physically ready to act or leave. But watch this. If they suddenly touch or scratch their nose, it often signals a stress hormone spike linked to lying. The science here is honestly fascinating. When a candidate's mouth is saying one thing, but their brain is doing something entirely different, the body always leaks the truth. When someone lies, a stress hormone called catecholamine spikes, causing the actual tissues in the nose to itch, which leads to a really quick, subconscious scratch. And keep an eye on their eyes, too. When someone is recalling a true memory, their eyes naturally shift around to process the heavy cognitive load. Genuine candidates recall their memories smoothly, but when someone is lying to you, they completely drop that baseline flow we established at the beginning. They might sit unnaturally rigidly still. Why? Because their brain is working so incredibly hard to construct the lie that it literally forgets to animate the rest of the body. Oh, and they will almost always give you way too many irrelevant, tiny details just to make their fake stories sound more credible. So, now that you have the forensic investigator's playbook to read the unspoken truth, the only question left is, how are you going to use these tools in your very next hiring meeting? Are you going to just sit back and listen to those rehearsed answers? Or are you going to watch the feet, test that handshake, and uncover the real person hiding behind the resume? The truth is sitting right there in front of you.